Yeah. You can call the 7.0. Then you call when you get here. Tell them you're here, or come out and get you. Right. Exactly. That's the way. I mean, I don't think there's any. I mean, if you come tomorrow,
Okay, I'm ready for.
Are you ready, Lisa? Yeah, anyone like to welcome everyone to the Inland Wetlands Watercourse Commission. Before we get started, anybody who's on the virtual and listening on the phone, would you please mute your phone until you're ready to talk, so we have no background noise or anybody talking? I would really appreciate it. Thank you. If there's any audience of citizens who want to ask a question or have a comment about anything that's not on the agenda, doesn't look like it. If not, that's great. Next is the approval of the special meeting minutes. Any additions, deletions, corrections?
Yeah, I'd like to, Commissioner Rogan would like to make a correction to page 6. And it would be, it says Commissioner Cabana should be Commissioner Rogan in the motion to table public hearing. Application 21-01W for March 2nd, 2021. Meeting due to public interest, seconded by Commissioner Cabana. Was correct. The motion was unanimous.
Thank you. Anybody else? If not, can I have a vote to approve the minutes?
Make a motion to approve the minutes.
Can I have a second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
I missed the second.
Commissioner Cabana.
Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to have a motion to open a public hearing for application 20-12W.
I make a motion. Which make a start.
I'm sorry.
I make a motion to open application.
Can I have a second?
Second, Commissioner Rogan.
All in favor?
Aye.
Up for the applicant.
Put my glasses on, my mask is off, and a little fogged up. Yeah. Good evening, everybody. Attorney Timothy Sullivan on behalf of the applicant, Preserve SM LLC. In attendance tonight are Joe Klepacki, he's in attendance remotely, I believe. And we have Bart Bove, the applicant's engineer, Jennifer Benno, the applicant's biologist, and Scott Stevens, the applicant's soil scientist. Mr. Stevens will be giving a summary of the wetlands re-identification. And Jennifer Benno will be providing the wetlands assessment report review. And Mr. Bove, who's the team leader, he will be coordinating a review of different proposals, changes that have occurred since the last meeting. Just a quick recap, as stated at the last meeting, the applicant has an option to purchase 110 acres from Shuttle Meadow Country Club, known as Lot 1, Block 10 on West Lane. The applicant is seeking to develop a 76-unit residential development to the south of the golf course, which includes performing regulated activities subject to the commission's jurisdiction. There are 2 watersheds on the property, Willowbrook and Mad Bassett. There are no flood hazards on the site. There are approximately 46 acres of wetlands on the site. Since the last meeting, a wetland assessment report, as I alluded to previously, has been submitted by Jennifer Benno, a soil scientist and environmental services, and she will be discussing that tonight. Also, there have been changes to the proposal, which have reduced temporary impacts by 3,400 square feet and upland impacts by 4,300 square feet. These changes have occurred in impacted areas 2, 3, 14, 15, and 16 on the site development map. I don't think that's up right now, but Mr. Bowman will be discussing those in more length. That's in the northeast quadrant of the property. It abuts the Shuttle Meadow Country Club. We're talking this area right in through here. This would be the country club down here, looking from south to north. This is the northeast quadrant of the property. The changes include relocating the golf cart path so it follows the existing footpath. This also results in an impact to a lower quality of wetland because it already has been disturbed. The second change was relocating the proposed installation of the sanitary force main through the wetland. It reduces the linear feet and again is adjacent to a previously disturbed footpath. In addition to a more detailed review of those changes, the team will also address issue raised by Commissioner White in his February 23rd, 2021 email to Wetlands Agent Jim Horrible concerning runoff raised by Glenview Drive residents and the temporary cart path disturbances. Before ceding the floor to Mr. Bobe, I want to update the commission on our efforts concerning the water and sewer service. I spoke with Berlin Water Control Commission Manager Ray Urema and Kensington Fire District Chairperson Joe Pagliarulli. There will need to be an agreement between the Water Control Commission and the Kensington Fire District, and once this is achieved, the applicant can enter into a developer agreement for the provision of water and sewer services. I asked both to move this ball forward and communicate with each other. At this time, I will cede the floor to Mr. Bobe for a more detailed review of the proposed changes since the last meeting.
Thanks, Tim. For the record, Park Overlay Committee, Colin.
Could we just ask all the listeners to mute themselves if they're not speaking?
Yeah, like I said before, if anybody who's in on the Zoom or on the phone call, please mute your phones or your devices, because we're getting some back feed and it's kind of disturbing. If you do that, please, we'd really appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, for the record, Park Overlay Committee, Colin Son, representing the applicant. I'm here to kind of respond to some of the comments that Commissioner White provided in an email to Jim, so I'll copy that, and I'll spend some time doing that and putting the information together. But I should say before we start, you'll see a couple revised plans in your package sheets 01 and G5. When I looked, and I was prepared to show an alternate location, we had our original car path out in this location. And there's an existing footpath that runs to this location. I was originally intended to present to the commission today an alternate plan, but after I prepared the alternate, I looked at the difference in a no-brainer. So in my mind, this is the location for the path, and that's a couple of reasons. Number one, the crossing between this location was primarily our original location. Having our wetland that which I talked about a little bit. And this is more of a natural, undisturbed wetland area to go through. There's a lot more trees, a lot more brush. So, whereas the footpath is fairly well controlled by people hiking on it, and it's just not a 2-foot path for people to hike. But as that path comes a little muddier, they move over and sort of new path and then move that path over. You've probably got about a 10 to 15 foot of real disturbance within that wetlands. So what we've done is we've shifted our location from approximately this location to our location just slightly farther to the east. The length of wetland crossing is slightly longer, I say 20 feet long. But the benefits are that overall, when you look at both the upland and the crossing locations, we've got over an 8,600 square foot reduction in impacts. That includes a reduction of just the impacts for the crossing of about 3,400 square feet, and the inland impacts, including this little piece of forest main, which we were kind of sinking all along this wetland, has been reduced by almost 5,000 square feet. So there's a significant reduction in wetland impacts on this plan. And this is the plan that we included with our package. We've given staff electronic copies of. We've modified our discussion of the wetlands impacts. You'll note, hopefully they're in color, that all the changes are in yellow, so you'll see exactly what we changed and what were removed out of the original report. But we think this is a significant improvement considering we were at about 100,000 square feet. So we've almost reduced about 5% of the total amount just in this one change.
Before you went, I have just one little question. I asked this last time. What's going to stop hikers now from using that path?
There'll be a bridge in this location, and there won't be any hikers walking through the site. This is going to be developed in such a way that this will be private property and it will not be walkers through that area. This will be owned privately. It won't be owned by the club as an ancillary out piece out to the side. This will be owned and managed by the people living within the association. So there's not gonna be a system of trails and paths that are gonna allow people to walk themselves through the site arbitrarily.
Okay, you're saying people use that area now.
People use that now, but as it gets developed, and again, we're planning on putting the car path in this location anyway. So the benefit is, yeah, it's, we are crossing the wetlands, but the wetlands are disturbed anyway. So
Right, I understand that, I just,
Right.
you know, I don't know if people are gonna be trampling, you know, to get to that path.
Is there any natural barrier to stop them from migrating?
Other than the fact that we actually want to cut across there, to have a high dry path instead of walking through the swamps and through the woods and across the brook or water course there.
And we figure that out, it's gonna be.
But there should not be people walking the site arbitrarily, because there's gonna be 78 homeowners or unit owners within this property. And they're gonna have a homeowners association, and they're gonna manage this property. There's just no way you're gonna be able to walk through there without somebody seeing it and saying, hey, could you please walk around?
Sorry, will they put a gate over there or anything?
For this,
Yeah.
we hadn't planned on a gate, but that's something to think about. I mean,
Just to keep the people from.
right, there was supposedly a vinyl fence that goes across there, and after reconstruction, we plan on reestablishing all that original stuff in there anyway. So, how they migrate themselves over there, if they walk around the fence or however, I haven't seen anybody over there.
I have it on my.
So I've given Lisa these figures, so she has them right, but again, for example, the bridge crossing, we've limited about 1,900 square feet of impact, the force main, we limited about 1,500 square feet. And, you know, we talked about the trees going through there. Unfortunately, there are probably a lot more trees in this location than there are in this location. So the chances of hitting a larger tree or having to do something substantial is significantly reduced. What we're gonna remove is probably low-lying brush and stuff, a lot of which is already permitted in the regulation and it's within a certain caliper size. So, you know, we're looking to kind of expedite our work through there and not have to damage the trees and damage that more established wetland area there and go through the more disturbed area. I'd also like, and maybe this kind of leads us through some of the aspects that Commissioner White asked. I saw two major questions he raised from an engineering standpoint. He also raised a question regarding the
Go on.
diversity, which maybe Jen can answer, of the endangered species. But from the standpoint of our work, there's two major points he raised, and I'd just like to address them. And what I'm going to do is just kind of give you both hand out that maybe you can pass around. I've kind of broken this up into two sections, so maybe you can take them down and pass them around. As I mentioned at our first presentation, we are not adding any more flow into this wetlands that happens at the present time. We are providing zero impact. So whatever flow is happening through these properties, in particular the properties off of Glenview, we're not changing anything. We're going to maintain the zero impact, and we'll provide calculations to show that. Okay? There's an existing 42-inch line that kind of cuts across through Glenview, and one of those handouts, the town GIS map, shows the location of that 42-inch line. That 42-inch line exits out near South Slope and combines with this wetland area here. And this charges down and takes all the runoff through here. I was looking through some of the assessor's records, and I found that actually this area here was built after all the remaining areas. We've got about 125 acre watershed. Our development contributes about 13 acres out of that 125%, or roughly about 10% of that watershed, and again, we're providing a zero impact. Our site drains approximately 34 acres, or 1/3 of that. The rest of that area that drains through this Glenview Drive is either the golf course area or portions of Moreland Road and Brown Hill Road that drain down through this area. All these areas were established before this development was located. And if you look at the GIS, you can kind of see the water course on the west side and where it discharges. It almost looks like they built the subdivision smack dab in the middle of the water course, and they put a pipe to route it around and build over it. That has nothing to do with this development, but I just think it's interesting. The fact that we're not adding any more water means that that 42-inch pipe was designed with all these features in place already. It wasn't like this 42 was built and then they decided to build a golf course and it added more runoff, they decided to build this. All this was in place and they sized that pipe to pass that flow through. I'm not saying that was right or wrong or what storm they did, but that's just the way it is. It's in place. We do not plan on disturbing any drainage through here. We plan on using the existing water course to help collect and discharge. And there was a question of how does this combine with the whole west side? Well, as I mentioned before, a portion of the site flows through here, but there's another portion, about 65 acres, that flows through this location, and they all connect over here, South Slope, and discharge that brook. That brook goes across West Lane, farther to the north, or farther to the south, and eventually crosses Oxyoke and into the Mattabesset River in that location. So it's about a mile from the site. So I guess what I'm trying to say is we are not increasing any more flows. The watershed area is such that we're only a small portion of the overall watershed, and the area we're impacting is only 10% of the overall watershed, and we're providing a net zero impact.
And is that the same thing as saying that, you know, the distribution across, let's say, the length of Glenview
It's not going to change.
has not changed? So
Nothing
that
has changed.
someone who might be relatively dry at one end of the street and it may be wet at the other end, it's not gonna get flipped around or
No, no.
anything, it's gonna.
In fact, I didn't make a copy of this, but if you look at the town GIS maps and you look at the wetlands, now granted, those are not official maps or accurate maps, but it shows a wetland here and another wetland here, and actually a little non-wetland area, which is the end of the Glenview subdivisions, so to speak. So it's quite obvious that this area watershed pitches this way and all this watershed pitches down to this way, and they combine into the same area. Probably at one time they all merged somewhere down here, except now they've met with a pipe and an overland area. So I guess what I'm saying is, 65 acres still flow through the wetland, 250 acres flow through that pipe. We're not changing any of that, we're not adding any more flow through any of this.
Mr. Bovee,
Yes.
Commissioner Rogan, my question to you would be, in this other report that's in this package, it says discussion of proposed wetland impacts.
Yeah.
And if you get to designation 10, 11, and 12.
Right, there's a typo in there.
Net.
There was a typo in there, and I corrected that typo in the revision to say that, not new. Okay.
Well, I assume the net increase to runoff the entire development was just that.
Right.
Yeah, I think maybe you meant to say no net increase, because I kind of read it like Commissioner Rogan does.
Well, again, I apologize if I
Says it will
misrepresented.
provide a net increase in runoff.
It should be no net, you are correct. I will revise that again.
Maybe take a look at
So
that
it's
again,
right
you don't
on the
want
record.
to be said on the record.
So no should have been in red in front of.
Well, that's what I.
Yeah,
That's how I caught that too.
Yeah, you're
Yeah, I
right.
read it the same way you did.
The other thing that Commissioner White wanted me to talk a little bit about the bridge crossing. And this has kind of changed a little bit since we made the revision, but I still think his points are still valid. The bridge is very important to this project, and it's very important to the club. There is nothing like this in the state of Connecticut as far as Shuttle Meadow understands, where members of the club can own property and we're able to take a golf cart to the golf course and vice versa. That being said, it makes the marketability of this project much greater than probably just a separate standalone residential community that's separated from a golf course. They really want this to work. So we will do everything in our power to make this work and make this a viable solution. The bridge itself with this new location is about 350 feet long. I think the question was how much impact it will have on the wetlands. Well, other than the placing of pilings, I did some rough calculations. If we and I don't have any final details of the plan, but the piles, I think I included a copy of a sketch layout, and I apologize, I had thought I had put this on the plan, but I evidently did not put this on the plan, but, bear with me, please. If the piles were set every 10 feet per bend, you'd have roughly 70 piles to be installed. If the spacing were up to 15 feet, you'd be reduced down to 48 piles. We're showing 9-inch columns to be driven into the ground. 9-inch columns provide an area of about 1.5 feet of impact. So if we had, say, 50 piles, we'd have about 75 square feet of impact of just driving those piles down. The way this bridge is going to be constructed is they're going to provide the abutment, they're going to reach in, they've got machinery that can drive the piles, they can put the bridge in, they can lay the bridge down, they can drive in, and they can put the next section of bridge. No heavy equipment has to be placed within that wetland. The only activity you may see is an odd worker who may go in and crank down a bolt or something on the lower areas. But you can also see by the detail, this is an extremely low structure. We're not planning on building this 6 feet in a year. We're planning on putting this within a couple, 3 feet on the ground. So when done, this area is going to look very natural and, extremely efficient from the standpoint of growth. There's not going to be enough room between the bottom of the bridge and the ground to allow growth really to development of those areas. We don't plan on stumping anything. We plan on just cutting stuff even to the ground, leaving the stumps in place and building the bridge. As I mentioned before, there are some of your regulations that allow smaller growth to be trimmed and such. But in deference to your comment about maintenance procedures and best management practices, what we'll do at the next meeting is I'll have an entire list of construction sequencing, best management plans for maintenance, repairs, and construction on those wetlands. So you'll understand fully what's going on with the bridge and how it impacts the wetland. I just didn't have enough time within the last couple of days to put the whole thing together.
Yeah, it just struck me that, as you do that, as you stated in your proposal, it's temporary impact.
Right.
But we're left with a pretty substantial structure
Right.
crossing the wetlands that's going to be used over 10, 20, 30, 40 years. Some of it's going to need to be replaced, pilings are going to rot. You're going to have to be going in there for decades and keeping the thing maintained.
And I think if they're up to date and current on their repairs, I don't think the repair activity will be substantial. It can be all done from the deck height. I think if they let it go for 20 years, they may have more substantial repairs. And we'll try to address that in this whole maintenance schedule and repair schedule that you were looking for. You were also looking for some kind of signage on both sides to kind of indicate that you're within a sensitive area. And so we have no problem with adding that signage to let people know that as they're crossing this wetlands, they're not supposed to throw their beer barrel.
And how wide is this?
The bridge itself physically is 10 feet wide. The area to pass is a little over 8.5 feet. You mentioned 2 golf carts, I think, in your email. We really intended it for a small pickup truck to go through there. Number one, for maintenance purposes, and number two, it kind of allows access back here through the force main. So it'll be a lot easier to come through this way for the force main and try to go through all that mishmash down there at the end of Harvest Hill Road. So it'll provide a simple area, just a small pickup. It's not going to be large pickup trucks and stuff like that, but just a small vehicle. That's typically what they use for construction, small track vehicles that reach out and drive the piles.
Yeah.
And,
I was picturing 2 golf carts.
Yeah, passing one another.
You have to pass, this is 300 feet long, it's pretty long.
Well, 8.5 feet wide, you can't get 2 golf carts within that area.
And the decking is just,
It's wood.
it's wood planks and so rainwater just
It
drains.
runs down, doesn't have any more impervious surface, the rainwater comes through and falls down to the ground and absorbed into the ground.
Would it be more beneficial for more pilings than less for the longevity of the bridge, which would be less impacted?
My only real experience with these, if you remember the old Pistol Creek waters, you've seen the bridges in Berlin. But there's a bridge similar to this on the Middletown side. If you ever crossed over the road and want to take a more adventuresome hike over on that side. And they have not maintained that at all. I think they probably use more glue lam than they do original timbers on the struts. So probably the lands have
somewhere.
the ability to stretch farther. There's only a limit that they can stretch though before their equipment doesn't reach. So we have to strike a happy medium with the materials they use. But my guess is no, I think they could probably stretch as far as they can. Right?
Oh, good.
That being said, I think I've kind of touched base and kind of talked over.
Sure.
Oh, good.
I'm introduce Scott Stevens. Scott? Some floor signs around my service, we were the firm that was agreed after we couldn't get the original soil scientist to be involved with the project. Scott came through, did all the evaluation on all the significant areas of impact, and he'll go through the whole process, and I don't want to steal any of his thunder. Thank you.
Hi, for the record, I'm Scott Stevens. I'm a registered professional soil scientist with Soil Science and Environmental Services out of Rockville, Maine. In December, we were hired to basically review wetlands and water courses in approximately 7 areas where they're proposing either impacts near or in or near the wetlands.
Echo.
So what we did is kind of expedite things. Instead of flagging the whole property, we had Terry Cole go and reset the wetland flags that were previously put up by Triton and Long Island in 2002. And they used blue flags and reset the wetland flags in the approximately 7 areas that Harry Cole wanted me to review to look for the accuracy of the wetland boundaries. So during December of 2020 and January 2021, we conducted our site inspection, looked at the upland soils on the site are basically Branford and Manchester soils. Those are the well drained. Then there's most of the areas where I was looking at the wetland boundaries were within the Marley Well and the poorly drained soils. So you had your Ellington, Silt Loam, Marley Well drained soils. In the uplands and in the wetlands were the Rainham and the Maple Silt Loam soils. First of all, most of the water courses that I saw on the property were within the flagged wetland boundaries. So I didn't really mark those because they're sort of shown on the plans already. But there was 2 intermittent water courses near the southern side of the site.
It's the south.
Yeah, southern. There was sort of one over near the wetland crossing area over down this way that was outside of the wetland boundary. Or I'm sorry, over there again. And then there was another one near the southwest side of the property where the trailhead is. And so I also delineated that. That wasn't shown on the original Triton plans. Most of my information is all documented in the February 2021. Probably the biggest changes that I found were on the north side of the site. Over in this area. Yeah, and I believe that they're not really proposing anything in that area anyway. So they moved that. So that was, and again, I don't think they're proposing anything in that area anyways, but we did correct that. And then also, I delineated the wetlands over here on the south. Yeah, on that area, and then also over by the trailhead, and then there's a little bit of wetlands. Looking for the parking areas, maybe. And so I did delineate those also, just so that they had that all correct. And then I just briefly walked through the remainder, of the uplands on the site, and as far as I could tell, the rest of the boundaries appear substantially correct to me. I don't get into any of the specifics for you with that.
There'll be more meetings. This is the same here. Just good.
That's the site. If you have any questions, I'm here to answer them. If you need any more information.
Yeah, I have a question for you. On page 20, I believe I should report.
That's the seventh. Yeah. Mine was the February 18th, 2021.
Can we answer this?
Jen's gonna have to share that question.
We're able to go into the meeting.
I'm gonna have Jen's, and I'll speak now. She did the site assessment from an environmental standpoint.
Okay, I can't have things hang on me. Hopefully that's okay. Brought my cheaters this time, so that was good. I'm Jen Benno for record. I'm biologist with soil science and environmental services. Scott mentioned our office is located in Knoxville, and I've been with the firm since 1994. So I was able to inspect the project area and the wetlands within and adjacent to the project area on December 11th and 15th of 2020, and also January 28th of 2021. And the purposes of the inspections were basically to get an idea of the existing conditions on the property in the wetlands. So I was basically looking for the dominant vegetation and wildlife. I was also looking at the primary functions that are provided by the wetlands within a near project area. Also during the inspections, I observed the existing conditions within the wetland and upland review area impact locations. We reviewed the plan set that has a resubmitted date at, I think it's January 27th, 2021. And I also reviewed by one.
I couldn't get online, just says no action, having a problem with it.
So anyway, the project area is dominated by wooded upland, wooded wetland, shrub community. So the shrub community is basically really dense.
So anyway, they got another link where you can call in and listen, okay? So I didn't get to the beginning.
Excuse me, who's ever on, we can hear your conversation.
A speaker.
If you could please mute your
I
equipment.
can't leave until this meeting's over, so I know where they are on the agenda.
Excuse me, whoever's talking, can you hear me?
So could you bring me my pepper, please?
Can you just mute everybody?
Thank you. Bye-bye.
You could try again.
All right.
Sorry.
I don't need to start over, right? I know it's been there. So there are numerous well-traveled hiking trails throughout the site. And during my site inspections, I did observe several people walking through the property. So the inspections did occur after growing season conditions ended, which limited our ability to observe the vegetation and wildlife on the site. But we could still observe the dominant characteristics of the wetlands on property. So basically, there's one large wetland. There's one large wetland within and around the proposed project area.
That's the old.
Anything colors? Okay, so essentially the wetland is in this area, crosses over here to the eastern portion of the site, wraps around to the northern portion of the site and the northwestern portion of the site. Approximately 17 acres of wetland occurs on property, and it's part of a much larger wetland system that occurs on and off site. It's approximately 40 acres. That information was provided by Park. So the wetland on the site is dominated by a palustrine forested or wooded swamp wetland area. And the dominant wetland vegetation I observed throughout the wetland includes red maple, elm, high bush blueberry, winterberry, spice bush, skunk cabbage, ferns, sedges, that kind of thing. In appendix 1 of the report, there's a list of the dominant vegetation I observed within wetland. So within this large wooded swamp, there are 3 distinct areas that I observed while I was on site. And the first distinct area is in the southwest portion of the site, and it's upslope to the west of the proposed road crossing. This area observed approximately 6 inches in water, and I observed hummocks in that area, which indicates that voters retain there for a good amount of time of the growing season, because the plants are trying to get up and out to get some air. This area, water overflows out of this area, travels through a water course down slope and into the main eastern portion of the wetland. The second distinct area that I observed is kind of to the northeast and to the east of the proposed project site. That portion of the wetland is broad, it's fairly level, there's just like a very gentle slope to it. I did observe some standing water in as well. The broad level nature of those areas of the wetland indicates it can be clean or deeply significant. And that would be like after storm events or even this time of year after snow melts and high groundwater. And the third distinct area to the northwest of the proposed project area. And there is a perennial water course that flows in from the west southwest, flows into this area. It's about 20 feet wide, plus or minus. And they're indicated that there's significant a lot of that water course at certain times of the year. I did observe washed leaves, and sediments, and debris within this portion of the wetland during my inspections. So there are some prior and ongoing disturbances to the wetland areas. I observed at least 2 trails that go through the wetlands that are utilized. I have also observed some dumped yard clippings or yard lawn debris kind of in the wetlands. I also observed a bunch of scrap cars on the property and in and adjacent to the wetlands. And there's some, other miscellaneous debris. So the wetland provides several functions, and the primary functions include groundwater discharge, sediment and nutrient retention and removal. There's wildlife habitat. There's also shoreline stabilization, water detention, and possibly some finfish habitat in the northwestern portion of our wetland. So now we'll get into the wildlife aspect. I observed really common species or species common to Connecticut. There's a deer, gray squirrel, white-breasted nuthatch, goldfinch, there's hairy woodpecker, chickadees, blue jay, Carolina, round red-tailed hawk. So those species are all common to Connecticut. Now, during my project review, I also looked at the most recent Natural Diversity Database Division map, which is on file online, and that's December 2020. Most of the site is not included on the map as highlighted. However, the western and northwestern portions of the site are included in a highlighted area, which means there are no listed state or federal endangered, threatened, or special concern species, which are known to exist in that area. So what I did is I sent a request form up to the Natural Diversity Database Division, and I also sent the most recently revised plan sheets and the assessment report up to them, to the Natural Diversity Database, so they can review what they have on file. And at some point, they'll issue a letter of their findings, and the letter will include the listed species and also measures to protect it or possibly mitigate for any actions as required. So we are waiting for that to come in. And I have no idea what their time schedule is on that. Also, due to project time constraints, we are unable to review the wetland during the amphibian breeding season. As I mentioned, I did observe areas of standing water within wetlands. So additional inspections will be required in order to verify whether any of those areas do indeed provide vernal pool habitat. Bart went over the impacts in pretty good detail. So I'll just quick go over the primary areas where we have direct wetland impacts. This is referred to as impact area 1, and that is the area where there's permanent wetland disturbance of 4,411 square feet. This portion of the wetland provides groundwater discharge and wildlife functions, of the primary functions in that area. Fairly gently sloping, and as I mentioned earlier, there is an intermittent water course that passes water downslope. And that is supposed to be piped to allow continued flow. It is also the narrowest portion of the wetland in that in some area of the site. Impact areas 2 and 3 are associated with the golf cart boardwalk and force main. There's existing walking trail through there, which Bart described pretty well, I think. There's also perennial water course crossings that lead to the bridge. And the applicant is proposing to restore the wetland around the force main impact area. As mitigation for the direct wetland impacts, the applicant is proposing to create 26,600 square feet of wetland, which would be located in this area here. It's area number 4 on the map. And the mitigation would be to compensate for the direct wetland impacts and the groundwater and the associated functions with this wetland are anticipated to be groundwater discharge and wildlife habitat, which is what is being impacted. There are also several areas where upland review area will be impacted or disturbed through construction of golf cart path, the force main, and the detention basin areas. Aside from right along West Lane, which is highly disturbed because the road is there, so it's primarily still very little vegetation. Predominantly, the upland review areas consist of wooded upland. So when you remove wooded upland, you can have potential impacts to wetlands. And the potential impacts to wetlands would be increased sunlight to the wetlands, which could cause maybe some warming, but also an increase or potential increase in your invasive species. Also, of course, if you have clearing adjacent to the wetland, then you have potential for accidental human intrusion into that area as well. So to reduce potential for the impacts, we recommend planting native, non-invasive trees and shrubs along the edge of clearing closest to the wetlands. Additional mitigation measures being provided part of this application is a conservation easement on approximately 56.5 acres. That would include wetlands and upland review areas around the project. The property owner would also convey approximately 19.4 acres of land, along with another 38.7 acres of Shovel Meadow Country Club property to the Berlin Land Trust. And that would be contiguous with the Ragged Mountain Preserve area. So I have a few recommendations in my report And the recommendations include the upland review area plantings, which would be native, non-invasive shrubs and trees within the cleared upland review area within 25 feet of the wetland boundary. We recommend that erosion sedimentation control measures are properly installed and maintained throughout the duration of the property. We recommend removing invasive species from the wetland and upland review area planting locations. We say a period of 5 years, you know, there's a little leeway there, depends if the planted shrubs can compete on their own, then maybe you can reduce the number of years. But generally, we're finding 5 years is a good amount of time. We also wanted to know if a culvert would be needed at the entrance to the trailhead parking, because Scott delineated an intermittent water course in that area. So we want to continue the flow in the direction that it's headed. We also agree with the Berlin Land Trust letter to you guys, and that was dated February 2nd, 2021, which recommends no inorganic fertilizers, herbicides, or insecticide use on the project area. And we also concur with the placement of wetland boundary markers. Alternatively, you could probably put the markers along the conservation easement. Maybe that would give a little bit more warning. And our final recommendation is inspections of the planting areas should be conducted for several years after the plantings have been installed. And that's basically to ascertain the survival rate and make sure that the areas are functioning properly. And it's also to document any soil stabilization or invasive species issues.
That was on page 20, your final paragraph, I think.
Yes. Okay, good. And I have a couple final notes. So we got a good start on the general characteristics and existing conditions of the site, but we're still waiting for some additional information from the natural diversity database, and also need to do follow-up inspections for vernal pools.
I have a question on the, you were talking about the area where the species where you don't know what they were because they were, is a report gonna come to you? Do you have any idea how soon that's gonna come?
No.
A guesstimate?
I don't want to tell you how long it took last year. The year before, I got it back in, 6 to 8 weeks.
How long has it been so far?
3, 4, 3.
Before our meeting in April, might be available.
Hopefully. I didn't want to tell you this, but last year it took 5 months to get the response back.
Because my question to, and Tim, this would be for you, Mr. Sullivan. I believe, and Jim will have to check this out, I believe we have a space where we can keep this open. And if it takes too long, are we gonna have to close the public hearing? You're gonna have to reapply. Now, I do believe that Governor Lamont extended some of the things like this going on because people aren't in the office, people aren't out working. I think that would be on you to find out if we can get an extension to this project that goes beyond what our charter allows.
You know where we're
Yeah.
at this point? We have another 30 days.
We have one.
At this point, I believe we do. I don't have the exact number of days, but I can certainly work with Attorney Sullivan to see where we're at.
Yes, non-COVID related extensions could push us into May very easily. You have 35 days, the application was filed in November. It's accepted at the next regularly scheduled meeting, not later than 35 days. So it was accepted at the December meeting. The public hearing must open within 65 days. It did that. It was opened in February 2nd. You have 35 days to close the public hearing, but you have 65 days of extensions added on to that. So you have roughly 100 days between February 2nd and the time that the public hearing has to close. So that pushes you into your May meeting. And that doesn't include any COVID-related extensions.
I'm just wondering, if you're taking, Last time you guys said it was 5 to 6 months. We're gonna be beyond that.
Hopefully not that long.
I think we'll have to take it a month at a time.
Yeah, right.
See how
Yeah.
things go.
I'm just concerned, that, I don't know if any you could try to push it along. I don't know what the procedure is.
I mean, I could get something tomorrow from them. It
Right.
really depends on their staffing and who could be in the office and how backed up they are. I have no idea. I'll send her an email, don't worry.
Yeah, I'm just concerned that, I don't want this to go beyond.
Yeah, no, absolutely, that's our concern as well, yeah.
I had another question. So there's a total acreage, I'll try to ask this, and I may confuse myself asking it, but there's like total acreage of the site, and then there's the developed acreage on the site, and you mentioned conservation easements at certain acreage. I haven't done the math, and you're gonna grant some to the Berlin Land Trust. Does that account for all the remaining open space, or is the project retaining some for potential future development or or do we have this development and then everything else is conserved in some other fashion, or is there still more?
This is it. The applicant's got control of 110 acres on the site.
Yep.
As Jen cited, there's 19 acres going for the land trust, there's 58 acres that are conservation. So even if we want to expand, we can't go within those areas. The zoning is such that when they granted the zone change, they only basically granted the plan they saw, which was 76 units back on there. So there's gonna be no expansion, this is it. Everything surrounding this is open space. The pieces that the club owns to the north or to the west is going to be given as part of the land trust for protection of the Blue Trail. And then over the wetland swamp is the golf course. So basically, this is development of this property.
Okay, yeah, that was my question, thank you.
Does the land trust need any access for any incident?
There is a paper street Wigwam Road that the Blue Trail is located on, so they have access into this site off the Blue Trail. My guess is, and that wasn't even discussed or was asked, we showed this plan to Dennis Curry when we looked at this originally, about any kind of access. They are talking about maybe putting a couple foot trails through here, whether they can do it or not, I have no idea, that's their decision. But their main worry is the protection of the wetland area and the protection of the Blue Trails across the site. And the taking of this property and also an easement that we're gonna grant them to the Blue Trail area down to the driving range, that should satisfy their concern for protection of active.
I know that the land trust is not interested in having any expenses due to maintenance with property that they acquired.
Right. Right, the property they're taking is minimal, I think they have a goal of maybe looping a trail or something to do, but again, I don't speak for Attorney Kern on that. I should also point out before we get too far into questions, Jen mentioned some comments and some recommendations. We have no problem complying with any of those recommendations. She also referenced the land trust letter from February 2nd. We've got no problem with any of those, and my goal was hoping that we get a response sooner than later on the endangered species that will supply this commission with a revised set of plans that will have all the additional plantings and all the notes regarding the protection of the wetlands and sequences of development for the bridge and such at your next meeting, so you have all that stuff in front of you.
Is anybody on the commission have any other questions for the three? If not, anybody, our citizens out there who would like to ask questions to the three people, please state your name and what your address is, and you can ask a question.
Yes, I have a question. My name is Enzo Di Benedetto. I live at 88 Glenview Drive in Berlin, and I had two questions. The first was, seeing as the additional units are going to be comprised of asphalt for the road and obviously roofs for the units, that area lost from the soil absorption during heavy rainwater has there been a rainwater vector flow simulation in the calculations to show during peak seasons where that flow will go, thus ensuring any flooding problems that we currently have now aren't going to get worse? So that's the first question. And then the second question I have is for the biologist, just kind of expounding on what she had said regarding additional studies. I was wondering if those additional studies were going to go into the warmer months when many animals that are in hibernation right now is going to be conducted. Because I can tell you firsthand that I've witnessed owls, bats, snakes, bobcats, frogs, turtles, all kinds of animals in my backyard. So I don't know the species. I'm not a biologist, but it just seems like that that study would have to be seasonal, not just during cold season. So I was wondering if that was going to be taken into consideration. Thank you. Those were my two.
I want to take the first one.
I'll answer the drainage question first. Primarily, detention area 3 is going to handle most of that drainage that works through and ends up at that 42-inch pipe. That has all been designed based on runoff coefficients for pre-existing and post-existing conditions. Pre-existing, obviously, there's no pavement other than a couple rusted cars that may contain some of the water, but other than that, the post condition will use a runoff coefficient that'll anticipate the pavement and the drainage and stuff, so it'll be much, much higher than pre-existing. And that stormwater management area will handle that flow so that pre-development flows do not exceed, post-development flows do not exceed pre-development flows. And before Jen talks about biology, I just want to point out that, yeah, we got bobcats on my neighborhood too, and they track me through the snow every day after watching that footprint through there. So they're not necessarily warm weather animals.
Okay, but have there been flow vector simulations done regarding the flow into the detention area?
I'm not familiar with that term. All I know is we're using a coefficient to provide a net zero impact. And the impervious surface component of that development will be included in the drainage computation, so we'll have a net zero impact.
Yeah, that's just simulating how the flow is going to go, where it's going to go, how much, and so forth.
Yeah, that's all been included in the drainage. We've broken down each subwatershed for each basin and each structure as it enters that detention area. We've looked at the impervious surface proposed, so we've accounted for all the pavement from the driveways, the roads, the sidewalks, the buildings, and even the car paths and sidewalks. So everything that's impervious has been included in those computations.
Okay, we can see those simulations or calculations or flow maps.
Yes, they're good. They'll be submitted to the town once we have all these revisions made.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, it's pretty simple. Yes. There will be additional inspections when the weather's nicer and warmer, so we can see weather-dependent species, especially associated with the vernal pools.
Okay, so that sounds like a longer study than 30 days or 6 weeks.
That's why we were asking if there could be extensions, but we'll handle that when the time comes. Is there anybody else has a question for the three applicants? No? Jim, any?
This is Bill Jackson. I have a question.
Go ahead, Bill.
I just had a question about nearby NDDB areas. If the applicant is conducting any type of a species concern, looking at those areas, and are they considering those areas within the context of the application?
Yes. I reviewed the most recent map available from the Natural Diversity Database. That's December 2020. And the northwestern portion of the property is highlighted on the map. So I sent a request for information form along with the plans and the wetland assessment up to Natural Diversity Database in order to get their input pertaining to species that are there. And their letter, we're just waiting for at this point.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else?
Yes, Joseph Pagliarulli here. I have a couple of questions myself. I'm still not quite clear about the storm water that's going to be coming into the Glenview Drive area. I've seen that pipe and it runs quite full. And even right now, if you go outside, you hear the catch basins running. Do you know how much flow that pipe can handle and how much currently goes through it? Is it at 80% capacity? Is it at 100% capacity?
This is Bart Pope. I have not done an analysis per se of that because we were doing a zero net impact, so we're not having any flow. I can look at that before the next meeting and provide information to the commission on that pipe capacity.
Okay, and I guess one other thing, no, never mind. No, never mind. I'm all set.
Is there anybody else that has any questions at this time? Anybody from the commission?
Yes, this is Enzo Di Benedetto again, just kind of basing off of Joe's question. I guess it's from my ignorance, but regarding the term no new net flow, if I pronounce that correctly, how is that possible with 78 units not adding additional flow to a sewer system?
It is possible because the added rainfall created by the development is going to be retained within the detention areas and released slowly so that the peak flow leaving the site does not exceed the existing peak flow. I'm not saying we're going to not have more runoff, but we're not going to exacerbate the peaks, so we're not going to increase the peak runoff from the site. So if that pipe, say, held 50 CFS using that 42-inch, it's just a guesstimate, we're not going to increase that flow. That flow may run an extra 4 or 5 hours longer, but we're not going to exacerbate the condition that happens at the present time. So we're not going to increase the peak flow. Those are 4 detention areas built within the 76 units will handle each of the drainage area that each one is responsible for, kind of mimicking the existing watershed. So we're not diverting water from one watershed area to a second watershed area. The water that flowed to a specific area is being replicated on a drainage design, and those detention areas will handle that flow.
So the stormwater runoff and the sewer system are 2 different lines?
No, you're not hearing what I'm saying. We're not increasing the peak runoff off the site. There'll be potentially more water generated off site, but that water is not going to happen. For example, if that pipe handled 50 CFS, but we knocked down our flows, so we only contributed 5 CFS during our peak, you'd have to have a reduction in the flows. But that's not the requirement for design. The requirement is for the site itself to have a zero impact. So the area in question that we're talking about that impacts that 42-inch pipe is that 3rd detention area 3. And that's roughly 13 acres in size. And that detention area is going to be sized so we don't increase the peak runoff leaving that pipe and going through the wetlands into the pipe.
Okay. I guess I'm not understanding something, because it just seems like if 2 lines share the same, if there's a single line sharing additional sewage along with the runoff, then where else is those 78 units worth of sewage going to go, if not into the existing line? And how could that classify?
I think you have 2 different things. This isn't a sewage line.
Well, that's what
stormwater.
That's what I was wondering, if there were 2 separate lines.
No, there's a separate system for stormwater and a separate system for sanitary. The sanitary is totally independent. There's no cross connections. There's no way that water from one can get into the water from the other.
Oh, okay. All right. That's okay. Thank you. That's what I was trying to understand.
I can interject. I understand Enzo's concern though. If there are additional units and even the sewage, if it comes our way, will it overwhelm the system? Because you won't have retention ponds on the sewage, the sanitary discharge. Is that correct?
There will be no additional units. The septic is going to be managed by the pumping station. There'll be a sanitary pumping station. So instead of everybody flushing at random times in a constant flow, the pump station will be designed so the water builds up and is pumped out at a standard rate. So there'll be a surge of flow that'll leave the pump station, but it has nothing to do with the storm drainage.
Yeah, I realize that, but it's the same notion. If the storm line can handle the additional discharge from the detention ponds, and as well as can the existing sanitary handle the discharge from your pumping station?
We will be providing that calculation, but in my initial review, that line's got enough capacity to handle the additional property. But I will provide that information to the water control and the Kensington Fire District.
Are there any other questions at this time?
Hi, Anthony Manzi, Harvest Hill Road. Can you hear me?
Go ahead.
Okay, I'm the last house on Harvest Hill Road. And my concern is I have a lot of drainage, storm sewers. I have one, I heard somebody mention Round Hill Road. I own the property in back of my house. It's lot 28. And I take the water from Round Hill Road that goes into an aluminum pipe that goes into a brook that I have in the back of my house. And also into that brook, water comes from Shuttle Meadow, drains into that brook and goes into a 24-inch pipe that goes to the right. If you're familiar with where my shed is, and the white fence, and beyond that white fence, that water is sent into the wetlands. So my concern is, whatever you're going to be doing with sewers and what have you, is any of that going to be disturbed? And also, I take the water from Harvest Hill Road. I have a drain a pipe that runs behind my neighbor's house that dumps into the wetlands again. So that's my concern right now. Are any of those pipes going to be touched? Because if you do, I'm going to be underwater.
No, we're not planning on disturbing any of those pipes. Other than running and extending and connecting the force main, all those pipes are going to be left intact. There'll be no impact at all to any of that drainage area. That all flows towards that 72-inch pipe or that 42-inch pipe that we discussed earlier, and we're not impacting any of that.
How about the sanitary sewer?
Yeah, okay. That was my concern pretty much. Like I said, it took me a long time to get that water diverted away from my house. And whatever we did is working. So I just don't want anything to be disturbed, if that's possible. And I guess you're going to come across the property into the road with the sanitary sewer. Is that the connecting to Harvest Hill Road?
Yeah, the plan is the town, Harvest Hill right of way goes all the way up to the property line of our site. I know that you've got lawn, you've got some fencing around there. We're planning on making the connection, taking down those fences as we do, and then restoring those fences and restoring the lawn to original condition upon construction.
Beautiful. Thank you. Yep. Okay. And just if this all goes through, can you just give me a heads up? Because I have a sprinkler system in that lawn, that part of the lawn, so.
I will
Which I'm
make
gonna
note,
have to take out, so,
I'll make note of that.
okay, thank you.
Is there anybody else that has a, yeah, go ahead, Bart.
Well, I was just gonna say, if nobody else has any questions, as I mentioned, I was planning on revising the plan. If any of the commissioners have additional comments, like Commissioner White gave the email to Jim, if you want to forward comments through Jim, I'll be working with him too as I develop the revisions here, at least initially before we get our additional reports. So I'd be more than happy to contact him and work with him to give you any thoughts or ideas that you have, and we'll put those on the plans as well.
Thank you. Is there anybody else? If not, I need a motion.
Chairman, even if I can be heard, I just want to make sure there was no other substantive.
Yeah, I don't believe there is, so.
Okay, I just wanted to be heard procedurally, certainly in recognition of the COVID-related uncertainties. At this time, we are, many commissions and applicants are in uncharted waters. COVID-related extensions total 90 days.
Okay.
With the 65 days, there's a caveat with that though. Under normal law, not COVID law, under normal statutory law, the applicant would have to consent to any extensions. So if we wanted to, we could consent to a 65-day extension. Under COVID-related extensions, the agency can impose up to a 90-day extension. Because we are within the 35 days now, we certainly need, this public hearing would have to close tonight. We would need an extension to take it to the April meeting, and I would request that the commission impose an extension through the April meeting. And the reason I'm saying that is because it's uncertain when Governor Lamont is going to terminate the executive orders 7B and 7I, which grant these extensions. And so as an applicant, we would like to keep our 65 days in our back pocket. And we would ask the commission to impose an extension through the April meeting. The commission would then have an additional period of time, up to 90 days, to continue to impose it. Unclear when that's going to end, whether it would be, if the COVID-related extensions are in fact terminated at some point with the executive orders, would they be terminated prospectively, or would they continue for pending application? So at that time, this time, I'll just ask the commission to impose an extension to close the public hearing through the April meeting.
That's just an extension. I agree with you, what you're saying, Mr. Attorney Sullivan. This is an important, we just can't let it drop, and we'll continue this. So I do need a motion to
impose the COVID-related.
Right. I need a motion to impose the COVID-related issue on
Application 2012.
On application 20-12.
To close the public hearing. Yeah.
Commissioner Rogan will make that motion. Would you like an explanation at this point from Attorney Sullivan to explain the motion?
No, just an extension to impose an extension to close the public hearing.
That's right.
Okay, so that's gonna be my motion. We need a second.
Through the April.
Can I have a second?
Commissioner Pavano seconds.
All in favor?
Aye.
We'll see you next month. Okay, I need a motion to open the public hearing for application 20-13, proposed by David Olson Construction, residential approved floodway, floodplain, and wetland upland review area on lot 4, lot 15, at 155 Tollgate Road.
Commissioner Rogan will application 20-13.
Have a second. All in favor?
I missed the second.
Commissioner Cassetti.
Thank you. The camera is right here. And so your bottom.
Oh, okay. State your name and who you are and what you do and.
Okay, good evening. My name is Quentin Webb. I'm a senior environmental specialist. I've been working in the wetlands field longer than Jim Corley has been working in Berlin.
So you're really old.
I am really old. I talked to him. And I was brought on board along with Sebi Amenta, our engineer, to straighten this project out and get it righted and on course. So one of the first things we did was we had Sebi run a flood model because the FEMA data was not available. It's convoluted, really for this area. It just, in fact, it was so bad they pulled it out of their records, so you can't even go and get it. And he can go into great detail if you'd like, but I would just summarize that we ran the model to see what the impacts are in that stretch of the stream between Tollgate, the upstream side of Tollgate Road, and then exiting the Olson property to see if there would be any potential impacts to downstream properties. Whether you subscribe to global warming issue or not, FEMA does. And right now, that's why they don't use the 100-year storm guidelines anymore, because the storms, while the rainfall amount is the same, it happens in a much shorter period of time, which increases velocity and volume. And storms are much more erosive now, the streams. And so basically, probably, in the recent years, Mr. Olson, the applicant, was noting more and more erosion in the banks approaching his foundation of his house. And unfortunately, while he knew what to do, he didn't get a permit before he started work. So a lot of work has been done. It was done very well. Everything is very stabilized, but he didn't finish the most important part. And part of the problem with that section of the stream, there's a town water line that goes underneath that culvert, hangs down about 18 inches or so. 3 feet. Okay, so it creates more, a restrictive flow path through there. So what happens is you get pressure built up on the upstream side, and when the water comes out of that culvert in a big storm, the velocity is very extreme for like the first 50 feet because the stream splits. If you notice, as soon as it comes in, it dissipates within 50 feet. By the time it leaves the Olson property, it's back to normal velocities. And but the problem is the foundation of his house is within that 50 feet. So what I'd like to propose or describe to you all tonight is the actions that are necessary to complete the armoring of the banks and protect the property in the house, and then all the restoration steps to remediate his previous work where he had fill and so forth that he stockpiled in the wetlands and in the floodplain. So what I tried to do on this map is give you little inset maps blown up so you can see what the activity is in the 3 major locations. And so the first activity is to finish the armoring of the bank in front of his house. Continue from where it ends now and then where it starts again. And in order to compensate for that small amount of fill, we're gonna take part of this island out, the edge that you see here, and you can see it in the cross section that we prepared for that.
And it's about twice the volume of what, the excavation is twice the volume of material than what we would be placing in there. But I don't know how recently everybody's been on site or whether or not you remember what it looked like or not. So I did bring some pictures, if that would be helpful if anybody wants to see that. So I'll pass it along, but right now, so if you, and I'm gonna block the camera, but here's the armoring area that we want to complete. Here's this point on this island is what we want to remove, compensate for that. But that not only do we get compensation by removing that point, but we also smooth out the channel. Instead, right now, that point drives the water directly towards his house. And as Jim can tell you, that most of the energy in any stream system is on the outside of the curve. That's where everything's pushing, cutting. So here, that's the point we want to take out. And we'll have riprap this piece here. And actually, that's just the blow up of the foundation. So if you pass it down as I work around. So this is the point we want to take out, smooth the channel. Oh, higher. It's about 23 feet.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's the point we want to take out, and then we finish the armor here. Everything else is armor and stabilized. And the picture that's coming down now just shows a close up of the foundation, footings and everything, and how rotating. So this is the point of this island we want to take out, and then we're going to add more armor here to protect the house. So we will be removing this, which would then smooth this channel out, and we connect this armoring to that. Oh, I'm sorry. You were supposed to see that. That's okay.
This picture here is what was there. Correct?
No, that's what's there now.
Okay.
All right, so we need to finish.
Okay.
The channel armor. And that's the last piece of work we didn't get to before.
We stopped.
Yeah. So when he was doing that work, was anybody on watching this? No, I don't think so. So when he did the previous work, and also he did take some material out of the bottom of the stream that's been collecting. It's mostly bituminous and sand and everything that's been rolling in from the roads and upstream over the years. And he stockpiled it significantly in this area. And the darker purple is the floodplain area and wetlands area, and the lighter pink is the upland review. But all of this is in the regulated area. State of Connecticut regulated area. And he also stockpiled some in his drive. And it's got erosion control around it, but it's not stabilized. It needs to get out. And all this needs to get out. So what I did is up in this corner on the map, I showed a cross section starting from the stream and back up to the uplands. And that is the amount of material that has to come out. There are mostly sediment, but there is, stumps and so forth, and that stuff would leave the site. And any debris that's non-natural debris, non-soil. Everything else we'd be bringing over here and grading it into the hill and into his lawn, and then seeding it and stabilizing it, and it just disappear, and it's all outside the upland review area. In addition, when we were out there, I noticed that a little bit of sediment, so you have two channels coming here, and they basically slow down as they hit the main channel, and any sediment that, whether it was created by him or if it's been building up there, I don't know, but there's a little pile in the water, and I'm recommending that be taken out and be put in here as well. So we would have 3 areas of material that would be brought over here, suitable fill material, everything else would be taken off site. And then this would be, seeded and stabilized and just become, part of his lawn. Let me just back up a little bit. So to do this work, what we're proposing is to use right where the stream splits into 2, we would seal this one off with sandbag, coffer dam, so to speak, with hay bales in front of it. And then actually the way the gradient is, the water shouldn't come back up to where the work area is, but just in case, we're proposing a line of hay bales there. And that also is insurance in case you get a rainstorm while the work is being done. And that would, if we didn't have something here, it could carry sediment into the stream.
You'd want low water seasons.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That work, yeah, absolutely. That work would be done in the dry season. This work can begin immediately and get it out of there. So understand that. So that's the big pile in the back. And we want to take out, and if you look, and then that's the little bit of sediment at the point. And then that's the pile in the driveway. And I kind of just circled it with pen, and then that's the area where we move it to and stabilize it. And so that's what this cross section shows. Actually, the surveyor's not as good at grading as I would like. Because this basically would not be a hump; it would be smoothed into the topo. So this area, that picture where the big area of I just want to point to that. There's a little bit of green showing over by the stream, and that is the original elevation that we will be going to. This material will come out so that it matches where that remaining vegetation that didn't get covered. I don't know if you noticed that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I've restored or built from scratch a lot of wetland systems in a lot of different locations over the years. And so I just prepared a list of plant material, herbaceous and shrubs, that I'm recommending go in there. And there's a couple of seed mixes that can work, but the reason there's so much detail in those seed mixes is that that's the way they come from the various suppliers. And with that number of different types of vegetation, you're guaranteed something is going to survive if it's a little wetter or a little drier than what you anticipate. Or it could be just the conditions of that year. The 4 wetland shrubs, you know, are commonly available at nurseries and containers, and I'm thinking a couple dozen, you know, in the floodplain area would be good. I don't think we need to plant trees. There's plenty of trees there. They'll come in naturally on their own. But the shrubs will give, they're all fruit bearing, and so they have the added value of wildlife supported. But there's other ones besides that. There's, you know, there's additional ones. I try to list a number of them because not every nursery has every one in stock at the time you're doing the work. So there should be enough on there, but if the applicant came back and said, listen, I can't get, actually, I think if you want, any changes to that planting plan should come back to the commission or the wetlands agent for a quick review, just to make sure that they're acceptable replacements. But there are more species than what I listed, but the two seed mixes are the best out there. They just are so successful because you can cover, you know, you can even do detention basins with them and get a, you know, create a wetland as long as you don't have to remove the sediment every once in a while.
Can you help me understand some of the figures over, you know, in this area? It says table of fill and disturbance. And then the southwesterly corner of the site. And then it says total cut 495 cubic yards, total fill 539. And then the last note is volume of fill in wetland and floodplain area is 31
cubic
yards. So like the fill is greater than the cut. Like what is that? What is that telling me? Like,
well, I think that
like, are these figures before you do all this work?
No, that was the estimate of the you know, that the surveyor made based on what he was thinking the existing topo was underneath.
So when, I guess the total cut and total fill aren't necessarily wetlands or upland review areas. That's just overall.
Right, yeah, he went and calculated everything on the site. But and I actually, that number, he did work up here outside the upland review.
Yeah, okay.
And he worked on the bank up there and so you can see all the new topo lines, and he had excess material that he placed in with the other material that came from
the
street.
I think I was probably wrongly concerned about those numbers. But
yeah, I meant to take those off on this iteration because what we want, what is important to us for the wetland and floodplain restoration is that 31 cubic yards that are right in here, but we also need to take that whole big hill up.
Yeah, okay, so that 31 is talking about the thing that was done improperly and has to come out.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, all right, I'm with you. And likewise in the lower section for the easterly end of the site.
Right. Same condition, and then he stockpiled some in his driveway. I don't know if he was going to reuse it for something or left it out close to the road so we could take it away. But anyway, we're going to incorporate all that in here.
Okay, I think I'm with you.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry, because that is confusing. It confused me as well, you know, because I was like, wow, what are you talking about? You know, because in reality, 100% of the upland review has been disturbed since the 50s at least, you know. It's all developed either as lawn or buildings or some kind of activity.
Right.
So
you're saying that you're going to remove that pile in the back.
Mm-hmm.
You say you've done it immediately. What's it like now? Is it muddy back there? Is it going to? How much disturbance are you going to do?
Well, we're pretty fortunate that we can do this in the upland review area. It'd be easy, and you're going to start from here and work your way down. Then the machine doesn't even need to go into the floodplain wetland. It'll stay up on the upland ridge and just pulls it. We're just pulling a lot. Fortunately, as you get closer to the wetlands, there's woody debris that was put down first, and then some soil over the top of it. So there won't actually be digging.
Okay.
So in the wetlands, it'll be pulling the junk out, and then we'll scarify the surface so that the seed takes, and then, you know, plant those 2 dozen shrubs.
So what you're saying, you're not planning on much disturbance as far as with equipment or anything like that back?
No, and in fact, this, I went back and forth, do we put hay bales around this, or, you know, or what? He can get it from this area and just pick it up, you know, with a little tiny machine and just lean over the bank. So I think that it's not fines. The fines have already long washed out, so I think he can just pick that right up and get it out. When I say immediately, I mean that can start when, you know, when the snow and freezing temperatures and the brutal weather that we've been suffering. You know, as opposed to this work, which has got to be typically August or
July, August, probably.
So that that's our proposal in a nutshell. I'm open to any other questions you might have.
I have a question, Commissioner Izzo. If this is all done, do you feel confident that this will be a solution so that the owner won't be tempted to bring in any more fill or anything?
I do, but I would let Sebi give you the engineering, you know, that this is the right thing to do, you know, with the erosion and the future flows that are going to be expected in there. It's
right. Hydraulically, it's the best solution for the preservation of the house because of that flow path.
Right.
And also it doesn't change the flood plain elevations, has no downstream impacts, and it stabilizes the area.
Okay.
Anybody else? I guess, Jim, from our standpoint, this is much better than what we started out with, way back when. My concern is, this all sounds nice on paper, but how do we know it's gonna get done? Mr. Olson, right here. And I know you don't want to hear this, but because of the past, what happened, we gotta make sure this gets done. There's gotta be some type of, I don't know if you said a timetable because of weather and stuff, but there's gotta be some type of recourse in our, if it's not done.
So anyway, all I've been trying to do is actually clean it up, make it flow and function properly. That does, and, you know, so it's more conducive to the, fish and wildlife, and everything, make it look nice. That was my intent from the beginning. And I've done a very good job, I just didn't get a chance to finish. You know, and I would be more than happy to do whatever you guys would like to do with it. I got these guys on board, and I have the equipment, I have the machinery, I own a construction company. I can take care of it. It's a matter of you guys letting me go and let me do the job, and I'll be more than happy to get it done. That's basically it. I'll be more than happy to do whatever you guys would like. I have the trucks, I have the excavators, I have all the equipment to do this. It's not a problem. The money's not the problem either. And I have very good friends that have anything that I need if I don't have it. So whatever you guys would like, I didn't really bring in much. I just brought the riprap in to stabilize the banks so that they don't keep eroding away. And, that was my intent. I have no problem trading off some of the island, and so I can put the riprap against the, where the house is, a wooden foundation. That's the only reason why I've done that is because it's eating away at my patio foundation and my house foundation. So I mean, whatever you guys would like to do, I mean, we're having. For the plantings, Jim, Danny Lavion has all Sunny Butter Nursery for years. When I work with Danny, we can get whatever we need, whatever you guys recommend. Not a problem. He's a good friend of mine. He lives right down the street from me. And that was my intent. And bushes, grass. When I'm done, it's going to be beautiful. When I'm done, it's going to look like a park. That was my intention, to clean it and make it flow and function more properly. Because it was stagnant and pretty nasty. And, so I think I did a pretty good job so far, I would just like to finish.
And I understand that, but, again, we gotta have some type of recourse on our end. If something isn't done, or you do too much, we want, this looks nice, and we're going with your experts here. This is what you should be doing. That's how it makes sure you're gonna stick to this, and it's gonna get done to what this says.
Exactly. Not a problem.
Mr. Chairman, how does this sound? If we continue the hearing to next month, and over the next 30 days, I can get together with Mr. Webb and finalize the planting scheme for the wetlands plantings and mitigation, and put together a schedule for the work to be completed by certain dates, if everyone seems agreeable to that.
I think that, this is nice. We don't have a planting schedule. We don't have a timetable. I think that would be great if you guys would get together, sit down, finalize a plan. You agree to it. We'll agree to it, and we can let you go from there.
If you're waiting to get the fill out there as soon as it thaws, it's kind of hard to move, dirt when it's frozen.
I understand, and that's why,
Yeah, we don't want to mud, we don't
right.
want to mud.
We'll take the next month to figure the stuff out, and then at the next meeting, we'll make a decision.
At this point, I think we're 90% there, and we can certainly wrap it up.
And you're happy with what you've seen so far, Joe?
And all this will be, all this information and what we end up with schedule and plan will be on a second sheet. Okay, because what you really want, you don't want loose pieces of paper,
right.
With important details on them. You want it on the plan sheet. So that would be the final set of plans that you would get.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. Jim, I just wanted, in your memo for tonight's meeting, there were 6 items that you listed, and one of them was submission of an Army Corps permit request.
I think dependent upon the recommendations of Mr. Olson's experts, a permit application may be warranted. This commission cannot condition any approval or action that they take based upon another agency down the road. But typically something like that would happen.
Yeah, and but you are, I sit on my commission as well, and we notify the applicant that, there may be DEP permit or an Army Corps permit, just so it goes in the record,
Okay.
So that would be something that you would put in your final record.
Anybody else have any comments or questions? If not, I'd like to have a motion to continue the public hearing to the next month.
I'll make a motion to continue the public hearing on application 20-13.
Mr. Rogan, can I have a second?
Commissioner Pavano, second.
All in favor?
All right, Jim, would you like?
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, John.
I had my wetlands meeting last night.
Little comment.
All right, and I need a motion to open the application number 20-14 WF, spoke by the town of Berlin, rehabilitate the Glen Street Bridge over the Manabasset River.
Mr. Rogan, I'll make the application 20-14 WF.
Now, second.
Second.
All in favor? Oh.
Did you get my email earlier with the PDF? I'm not sure. No?
Was it today?
Yeah,
I don't think so.
no, okay. Is there any commission, last time there was commission members on the,
Yes, Bill Jackson's on,
Bill Jackson's on the,
and I don't know, caller 67,
okay,
I think there's
Oh.
later.
maybe I can, I might be able to like hold this up, maybe, perhaps. I'll hold it up so that you can see it, just because
I live there, I know what you're talking about.
Oh. Very good. All right. So last month, I came and, showed the general plan and everything that was going on.
Your name, please?
Say your name.
Sorry, Eric Jarbo, AI Engineers, working for the town of Berlin to do the design for the rehabilitation of the Glen Street Bridge.
I think you could take your mask off. You're distanced
Yeah.
enough.
Take your mask off so it's easy to understand.
Okay.
Bill, thanks.
This project, just, real quick overview in general is, it's to rehabilitate the existing corrugated metal pipe, which runs parallel to an existing concrete box structure. And we propose to reline it with a smaller pipe and use grout in between the two in the annular space, and construct a concrete cutoff wall at the upstream and downstream side, and then provide some fishery enhancements, which are rock weirs and the outlet. We're going to provide those fishery enhancements in the box. So those will be rock weirs at the outlet side, and then fish baffles within the box to provide basically ponding areas and elevation change to allow the fish to swim upstream. So the major thing we talked about last month was the increase in the flood, in the 100-year floodplain elevation upstream. And that increase was, so it's a little bit, I explained like the discrepancy with the FEMA mapping that's there now, which, so the FEMA mapping that's on record right now was with two smaller pipes. It was before the box culvert went in. The box culvert went in, it's a larger opening, so it reduced that 100-year floodplain elevation upstream. And the FEMA map was never changed because that was done as an emergency. So
when was that done?
That was in the 80s.
1986. 87, excuse me, 87.
So the, let's see, floodplain impact. So we have an increased upstream floodplain, 100-year floodplain elevation of 0.88 feet from the existing. But the published in the FEMA study is actually 3.25 feet higher than the existing. So we're still within, we're increasing it. So you guys, fair enough, that, talking about the arbitrary elevations, it's kind of difficult to see. So I developed a plan that basically shows the area. So if you look at that, it shows the bigger, like kind of purpley blue area, the largest area, that's the existing 100-year flood. So that's the smallest area. It's the 100-year flood. That's what's currently out there today, based on the existing conditions. The proposed 100-year flood would be that would be the 100-year flood after this proposed work was done. So you can see a little bit of the change. It spreads out a little bit because that represents that 0.88 vertical increase, and it obviously as it goes up, it's going to go out because the channel is tapered. So then the FEMA documented 100-year flood, that's in the green. So you can see that actually right now it overtops the roadway. So originally back when this thing was first constructed, that 100-year flood would have overtopped the roadway. That's not the existing condition now, or will it be the proposed after the end of the construction? And you can see the width, it's a bit wider along the channel upstream. Obviously this, I just put two notes on there. this, I just cut it off. It continues upstream, obviously, like this 100-year flood, right? It follows the river up, and then downstream, there is the proposed 100-year flood and the existing 100-year flood is also downstream of the roadway and the culvert as well, and it has a width, and it's somewhat similar to, didn't draw it all on there. It's kind of sort of tedious, and that wasn't really the main focus. The main focus was upstream. So, but it has about the same sort of dimensions as the upstream. It's all within the 100-year, within that FEMA documented 100-year. So just to be clear. So I'm just going to hold this up because I think hopefully this will be a good graphical representation if you could see it well enough.
Thank you.
Yeah, because I spent all that time on it. I want to make sure you get to see it.
All right, thank you.
Okay. So I guess, we could move forward with, we still have to go through Army Corps permits. And, we're still coordinating with DP Fisheries and all the different, but this, we're within the FEMA documented 100-year flood. If the commission wants to see, definitely, document the, and push forward with a letter map revision to change that, boundary and make sure that it's all as accurate as it could be, then I guess you could decide to do that. Or potentially go forward based on this information, knowing that it's within that already documented floodplain area.
I mean, it's so close to what FEMA's, I don't know if we really have to change anything, guys. What would the town want you?
Certainly, I think when we look at the additional permitting required, we talk about the Corps and deed. If they feel that those changes are significant, they will make us run through the motions to modify the.
But as far as we're concerned, we really don't.
Yeah, they might make us do it anyway, right? Yeah.
We've had experience with that.
Hang on 1 second.
Most recently with the Spruce Brook Road Bridge, there were discrepancies.
Yeah.
We had to go back and readjust the flood limits as a part of the design.
Okay. So it could happen, but it might not.
Correct.
I just want to bring to your attention that Dr. Ringrose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I want to make sure, any other questions from the commission? Sir? Your name and
Dr.
your
Vincent
address?
Ringrose, my wife and I, Carol, own most of the property on the west side of the bridge. They're coming down, and we own all of that meadow that became the pond.
Yes.
And my living there since actually being there since 1982 and living there since 1983, we've had twice that the pond was full. One was in June of 1984. I remember it so well because we had Celtic tickets and they were playing the Lakers in Boston in the finals. And the game was like Tuesday night, and on Monday we woke up and we had a pond. And the pond was full of wild ducks, and the yard was full of water snakes. I mean, it was pretty bad. But interestingly enough, it didn't, when it came up high and started trickling over Glen Street, it did not wash out upon the Glen Street like the main, the Meriden Dam break did, which you all remember. It came up very quickly, and what we got was a huge chunk of the road blasted out, and about 300 golf balls in my backyard, which the flood had come right through the golf course, and every golf ball anywhere on the golf course or in any of the water bodies on the golf course came down, and when the water finally stopped running so fast, they all settled in my meadow. I filled them.
Golf ball sale.
Huh?
So you sold golf balls?
No, I didn't sell them. I put them in a bucket and I took them over to Timberland and I gave them to them for their guys that like to hit balls and things. But here's the thing. I could be a pain in the ass here, and I'll tell you why. Because I'm a big man for trout. And I almost became a fisheries biologist, but I made up for it by becoming a pro bono volunteer with the DEE fisheries in many different areas. I was head of the State Fisheries Advisory Council for more than 10 years and so on. I know every biologist, every head of the department, including the head of Fisheries Division, so on and so forth. And twice that stream, counting the pool just below Glen Street, the big plunge pool, all the way up through our property, under the old Sheldon Street Bridge, up around it, almost up to Clay Patch's house, where there's a break in the rock wall, where there used to be some kind of an iron processing thing. That whole stretch, which is about 1,500 feet, that has been a study area by the DE fisheries for almost 40 years. We have electroshock surveyed that stretch twice a year since 1983, except for this year, when Governor Lamont said no gatherings that aren't absolutely necessary until further notice. And so they didn't want to come down because there's usually 7 or 8 of us. 3 biologists, 3 UConn students, and a couple of other people that are interested. And they know more about that stream from the wild brown trout population than they do any other stretch of trout stream in the state of Connecticut. Now, when we had a lot of trouble with that, were you involved with the High Street Bridge? The High Road Bridge? Okay, well, you guys remember the High Road Bridge. I went there and raised holy hell when they were close to finishing, because I went, I looked, and they did not have a natural bottom on the stream. There was no natural bottom at all. And I said, oh, it's not gonna go. And we had wild, this completely self-spawning, self-maintaining population. And the big fish move up and down the river, and the little guys live amongst the rocks. And, you know, it's a very nice self-propelling thing. But if they don't have a place to move, and they don't have good gravel bottoms to spawn, like that fellow that left, I was saying, a yard full of gravel. Somebody could use that in a brook somewhere. Maybe you could use it in this brook. But the thing is that, and I really did. The guys were just kind of cleaning up, and they did not have an actual bottom under that bridge. And I went up one day and I said, you better do something. You know, I went up 2 days later, they were still there doing their stuff. And who was there but the job supervisor for the company that was running it? And I told him a thing or two, and I said, if you don't want the commissioner of fisheries down here and all this crap that the state law people can give you, fix this the way it's supposed to be. And the guy looked like I had just told him his daughter was pregnant. You know, the thing is that, you know, and what happens is that they fix it, but it's very nice. It's very nice. So what I do not like, the concrete baffle, I mean, the corrugated thing, there's a kind of a natural baffling there anyway with the little dips. But I'm not sure that you're going to get the result we need by just putting in a few baffles. I've seen baffles work in some places, but you're better off if somehow you make a natural bottom. I'm not, and I tell you, the guys from the DEP will tell you the same thing. A few baffles here and there, well, yeah, but what you want is something that's like a standard guide. I told Commissioner Rogan here, one of the first times I went there to look at my property in the fall of October 1983, I went down to just above the bridge. It was a nice big road. And holy mackerel, there were 2 brown trout there like this. And they obviously had come up from the pond where they had grown, and they were spawning just above that bridge in a nice crowd. Where they came from, we're not sure. Dr. Tchaikovsky, everybody who lives in Berlin knows Dr. Tchaikovsky. He apparently had done some trout in the upper Mattabasset near the golf course a few years earlier. And they had come down and they had settled in that area, and they lived in that pool because I started throwing pellets. I got some floating trout pellets. It's always fun to see fish come up and grab those pellets. And lo and behold, every evening I go down there and these fish would come up through the tunnel and eat the pellets in the water above the bridge. But the point is, there are lots of trout there and lots of nice trout. The biggest trout that live permanently in the stream, 15 inches. Anybody trout fishes know the 15-inch fish is very nice. Now, we fish catch and release, and I used to fly fish a lot in there in the evening when we first moved in. It was wonderful. But what I'm saying is we've got to make it so that there's no problem with the passage of that thing. And Don Missling, who gave the deep approval of the High Road Bridge, when we were having all that trouble at the end, I called him up, and he'd been in some of these shockings many times. And he's from Wallingford, and I called him, I said, "Dad, Benny," he said, "I gave that approval like 6 months before they started working on the bridge." So apparently, before you do any work, you've got to have the engineer say it's okay, and you've got to have Deep say it's okay. And you want to have look and say, and Dr. Reynolds is in here and says, "You damn well better match the ground," and then you'll be fine. All right.
We, are you familiar with the Burlington Brook, Connecticut DOT job along Route 4?
Yes, I will.
And the fish pools that we put in, I worked on that. With Don. So we have, so here, it's a tough, so this is definitely one of those tough spots where we have, so we have the existing, because there's I'll say, quote unquote, the correct way, the ideal way to fix it would be to rip out this old culvert. And then to put in a brand new box, a three-sided arch, or a box and really bury it and fill it with gravel. So that's obviously a lot more cost and all of that, expensive thing. And then, so now we have this situation where, if we need to strengthen this so the road doesn't collapse. If we put in this new pipe, obviously, it'll be even more perched, and we realize that we're going up. The new invert of this proposed liner will be higher than the invert of the concrete box, which is why we're shifting to the concrete
And you want to make sure you don't. One thing you gotta be careful of, those nice rooty banks. That along the edge, that starts way, not too far above the bridge. You wanna make sure you don't erode that and knock it down, because the little fish, they hide
underneath it,
They on both sides. So you wanna protect those banks.
Okay, and then so then we have those fish. I mean, we could do, if we did a natural, if we tried to do some sort of natural baffling, I guess, one, I'll say that like a full bed of natural stream bed material inside the box, I think is gonna be the elevation will be too high. And then.
The way it is.
Right. And if we try to put in some sort of baffles just using gravel, I just feel like the first heavy storm, it's just gonna be downstream.
Well, but I think I'll be honest with you, I think you put a good mix of gravel and grapefruit-sized boulders. You get much more stability than you ever thought. I've worked on a lot of street improvement projects. When I was head of the Connecticut Fly Fishing Association, we worked on the Jeremy's Brook over there, which is a tributary to the Salmon. We worked on Salmon Brook up in Granby. We worked on the Burlington Brook, not the private part, upstream for that, where there's a falls there. Yes, well, we worked, Dr. Ellis and his limestone trout club owned that in there, about a quarter mile or so. And we worked in there to help build him some pools and stuff. So, but you've got to protect those things, those banks, and they're.
So all right, so
just don't get a scholar in there to, those guys that run those machines, they love to move stuff. They really do.
And then, so the banks on both the upstream and downstream side. And then so if we did, maybe we could do something with, we have the baffles that we want to install. If we put natural stream bed material in with the baffles will help hold the stream bed material.
It might, yes, but you want to have, you've got to have some gravel in there too. Otherwise, the fish are good. Well, look, they can get used to anything. They can just get anything, and if there's food involved or sex involved, they'll probably make an effort. But I think the easier you make it for them, the better the natural.
Okay. All right, so I'll talk further with and I'm sure you'll probably be in touch with them. I'm gonna be working with fisheries, so.
You know which one you're gonna work with, have you?
I don't.
There's a new crew, more or less.
Yeah, because Don's gone.
Bergstrom and a few guys, Don just retired.
Yeah.
Steve Gephardt just
Oh,
retired
Steve.
also.
Steve just retired, but Steve's he's the migratory fish guy. He worked on the dam by the post office, He's a good friend of mine, but he just died.
What?
Excuse me, he didn't die. He died from the DEP.
He hasn't signed that permit yet. No.
No.
All right, so we're gonna, we'll obviously be working with them, and we already reached out to them. And I already know from experience that we need fisheries enhancement, so that's why we started with this stuff. But, so we'll work with them and we'll talk about, maybe adding stream bed material, or if they could come up with something, I mean, we could, I would like to, if we had those stones in there, I would like to maybe like mortar them in place a little bit. Something to keep them from,
Going out the first big rush of water,
Yeah.
of course.
Yeah.
But you're gonna leave the overflow. The overflow culvert's not gonna be messed up. The square box, you're gonna leave that like it is.
No, we're gonna put the fisheries enhancements in the square box.
Oh.
Because the new pipe is gonna be higher in elevation, the invert will be higher than the existing concrete box.
And where's the wall? I don't like that.
No.
You mean that we're gonna have a pond every once in a while in the backyard? If you raise that invert a foot higher, we're gonna have ponds in the backyard a lot.
So that's where the 0.88 feet of 100-year storm, you'll have 0.88 feet.
Yeah, we get some measurements, we get some plenty of days in the spring when it's kind of lapping the edge of the brook. Okay, and
Eric, at this point, just to refresh my memory, the present design calls for a relining of the corrugated metal culvert.
with a new corrugated line.
Yeah.
With grout to hold it in place.
Yes.
Yes, and that's more of a temporary repair based upon the load ratings that the
That's
roadway
right,
has
right,
been
right,
reduced
right,
to.
Right.
As a part of that, he is looking to compensate and create somewhat of the fish habitat within the existing concrete box by installing the baffles.
Right.
That will be reviewed again by DEEP, okay, and their fisheries folks.
They don't stay under that bridge. They don't stay under that bridge. They move through it.
And that's the purpose of
They move
the
through it.
baffles.
Right.
Yes.
Move through it and, okay.
So we've already taken the approach to try to address that issue.
Yeah.
Obviously, we're looking at a hazard that currently exists to the motoring public
Right.
over Glen Street. Public Works is requesting the authority from this commission to proceed with the repairs of the bridge.
When do they plan to start?
Let me just finish. So once this commission grants an approval, go ahead, so that we can at least try to schedule the repairs. Prior to that, the other agencies, the state, DEEP, where fisheries will get involved, along with perhaps the Army Corps, and they may require additional changes or enhancements from a fisheries standpoint. If that is the case, we certainly will be abiding by their recommendations and bringing it back to this commission. But we're trying to keep this project moving. It's not as if it's a new construction or a total reconstruction of the bridge.
It really is a safety concern.
It's a temporary, it's a
So there's no
an emergency repair.
No harm to follow moving the project along.
Yeah, but I think the passageway should be where the corrugated tank. Understand what I'm saying? I don't think they should be baffling the overflow and expect them to do. I think you should modify the new tube, the new corrugated, the new pipe in such a way that it makes a good passageway. And I don't think you have to do an awful lot because they're going through that now.
I think the way I understand it, that modification will be recommended by the state fisheries, even though we move the process.
Oh, that's fine, that's fine.
Okay, so
That's
we
fine,
can
but
move it ahead.
I want them to look, because they know that stream very, very well. The guys that come and look at it, make the permission, whether it's Neil Hextrom or somebody else, they know that stream.
And I could even bring it up, because they obviously know you.
Yeah.
So in our discussion, I can bring it up and say, your opinion, go with the corrugated, because it doesn't, we can do either one. And I just did that mainly for, I was concerned about velocities because of the obviously the bottom of the arch, of the house pipe is more constricting. So, but we could go with the, certainly, we could put baffles in that and use that as.
Sure.
But I think for the sake of moving this forward, because it really is a safety issue for the town.
Oh, you gotta fix it. Don't get me wrong. I have no problem with fixing it. I just want to make sure that the test messages are fine.
Right, and I understand that, and I think if we approve this tonight, you and the other agencies will look at this and make recommendations above and beyond possibly what you're already talking about.
Yes. I'm sure they're not gonna want less.
Right. So, and you're willing to adhere to that and,
Sure.
You're comfortable with that?
Sure. I'm okay with, yeah.
Well, he's already worked with the guys that I know he'll be working with. and
Yeah.
I feel comfortable with him working with them.
I've never seen it, honestly, I've never seen anything unreasonable. It's all made sense. It's all been useful. And I've seen them after they constructed them and I'm like, oh yeah,
That's not bad.
that makes sense.
Anybody, any other questions? Jim, you're satisfied with what? So I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing.
Commissioner Pavano makes a motion to close the public hearing, 20-14 WF.
Can I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And now I need a motion to approve the project.
Yeah, I'll make the motion to approve application 20-14 WF.
Second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Rogan and Casetta?
Yes, sorry.
Thank you.
All right, next up, I need a motion to open application 20-01, proposal by task force to construct a truck maintenance facility and associated improvements within the regulated areas on lot 6A, 32 and 42, block 83C on Webster Square Road.
Commissioner Rogan will open application 21-01 W.
Can I have a second?
Second, Commissioner Pavano.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Up for the applicant.
Oh, but this room is rough. My car's unavailable. Thank you.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Jim Cassidy, professional engineer and principal with the firm in House, Pearson Cassidy. And I'm here tonight representing Task Force for the proposed expansion of their automobile dealership located at 250 Webster Square Road. The first plan I have up, or first photo I have up, is an existing condition site photo. Task Force actually owns 3 properties. All 3 properties are outlined in yellow. Pick me up.
Your bottom is right in the camera. And where I like to look at bottoms, I don't. Sorry about that.
So the overall property on this map is outlined in yellow. Again, it consists of 3 pieces. The first piece is the actual automobile dealership here, located at 250 Webster Square Road. In addition to, they got another piece of property here located at 73 Woodlawn. So this is Woodlawn on the top. There used to be a factory on this property. There were some issues, contamination issues with the factory. The structure itself has been removed at this point. Concrete slab is still in place and will remain in place due to some environmental issues below it. In addition to the far right-hand portion, they own an additional piece of property. It's actually landlocked. The address is 0 Worthington Ridge. This is an area they presently use for storage of vehicles. The overall site consists of about 10.882 acres. It is in 2 property zones. It is in the it's in the PSA zone, planned shopping center zone, and also the portion along Woodlawn is in the BT 1 zone. There are some wetlands on the site. There's a larger wetlands area along the, we'll say, easterly boundary, along the former factory. I've highlighted the teal on this plan. Kind of traverses through the property line. It picks up a hillside that drains down in a westerly direction and then conveys water to a culvert that eventually ties into Woodlawn Road. Presently is wooded, be considered a wooded swamp area. In addition to, within the center of the site, there's an additional small wetlands area that's about 1,120 square feet in overall area. This wetlands area is part of a drainage swale that exists along the back of the former factory. There's a berm, and then there's a swale that basically collects water from not only the parking area, but also the former building, conveys it in the southerly direction, and eventually discharges to a culvert where there's a control structure that continues and then eventually drains out into the drainage system out Webster Square Road. This wetlands area is in a developed complex. You can see that the yard area all around it. The primary functions of the little wetlands area in the center would be stormwater attenuation, groundwater recharge, and also stormwater renovation. Otherwise, it does have some invasives in it. It does have some frag mining in it, but otherwise it doesn't have any wildlife or any other functions to it. What we're proposing to do, what we're here before you for, is Task Force is proposing within that rear parking area to build a new building. The overall building has a footprint of 32,495 square feet. What Task Force would like to do is create a new, what they call a truck repair center. If anyone's familiar with Tasca, they have another operation up in Cranston, Rhode Island. They have the same almost identical building in Cranston. And if you ever go by Task Force, you see they deal heavily in construction type vehicles, larger trucks. So what they're looking to do is build this new building within that rear parking area to be able to service those vehicles. The idea is that on one end of it, the northerly end of it, there'd be an entrance door, so customer vehicles can enter through that door. All the work bays would be within inside the building. There would be a main corridor down the center, which the service base would be accessed off that main corridor, and then there'd be another door on the southerly side to exit back out of it. No service doors along the easterly side of it. This is a residential neighborhood off to the east, so that the existing 50-foot wooded buffer would remain. There's no windows, no doors on that side, so there'd be no operations on that side of the building. There would be a few doors, actually about a half dozen doors on the westerly side of the building. These doors are for larger vehicles, such as small school buses. Those are smaller box trucks. They're not working on heavy 18-wheeler type vehicles, but more vehicles that they would sell, but they do also service the school buses. So these bays would be allowed access into the building for those larger vehicles. In addition to building the building, we're going to reconfigure their display parking and also some of the storage parking. In total, we're looking at between display and customer parking, we're looking at having about a total of 533 spaces. Right now, up at the corner of Webster Square Road and Woodlawn, they do have some display areas. We're going to reconfigure it slightly, do some regrading. In addition to where the concrete slab is today, we're going to build a new parking lot over the top of it. Again, the concrete slab stays. We're going to grade it in a manner where we create a high point at the midpoint, draining it both in a westerly and an easterly direction to a series of catch basins that would be around the perimeter. Those catch basins would pick up the water from this new parking area, convey it through an underground conduit system, and then continue it all the way down through this parking lot, eventually discharging to a new underground groundwater infiltration system. And also we'd be reconfiguring some parking within front of the building, in addition to off to the side, for probably about 60 customer vehicles, so not only storage, but customer spaces, and then also some vehicles that are being repaired to be able to store in that area. The remaining site would remain the same as it is today. Utilities to the site, basically the building is at about the same elevation as Woodlawn. The sewers are about at the elevation of the bottom of the footing. Therefore, to get sewers out of this building, we're actually going to have to put a low pressure force main system in just out this corner of the building. discharge to the low pressure force main and tie into lateral out in Woodlawn. We would be bringing water, domestic water service in, and also fire protection due to the size of the building. All the other utilities would also be brought in through the main driveway and into the building. So as I mentioned, for the drainage system, there'll be no drainage within the center of this parking lot. We've graded in a manner so everything's forced off to the sides, outside that concrete slab area, outside the area that needs to be maintained. So there's a series of catch basins around the perimeter. Again, they're all collected by a series of pipes, but then eventually discharged to an underground infiltration system. So for the development of this property, what does this mean? We are looking at having, number one, a direct impact to the small wetlands area. We're looking at filling this wetlands area, so we have a direct impact of about 1,120 square feet. The other impact would be presently there's an upland review area to the wetlands. Because the wetlands is going on, we're building a new parking area. We also have an activity of about 13,000 square feet of activity in the upland review area. In addition to, along this easterly side of the project, to construct the new driveway and do some grading, we have some clearing and grading that's going to be going on within the 50-foot upland review area also. That activity consists of about 1,265 square feet. As I mentioned previously, the primary function for this wetlands basically is stormwater attenuation, groundwater recharge, and stormwater renovation. We are proposing to put a new underground system, once again, to promote stormwater attenuation, groundwater recharge, and also stormwater quality. There will be a section of the system that will actually take in the first flush and treat the first flush of runoff. From there, it's going to discharge out of the system through a control structure, and then eventually on to the existing outlet structure, and then continue on to the drainage system that's underneath the park line going out to Webster Square Road. We did do an extensive drainage study as part of this project, and we find post-development, we would not see any increase in flow for any storm event anywhere from a 1 to 100-year storm event. And again, it's all designed to not only treat or to handle the peak flow, but also to treat the stormwater quality post-development. So we feel by removing this wetlands, we are putting its primary functions back in place by putting the system in. The system itself it consists of a series of 4 by 4 by 8 foot long concrete galleys. There's a total of 81 of them. So it works out to be 9 rows, about 72 feet long. And then again, it's going to discharge through an outlet structure that controls or regulates the flow out. For mitigation, what we were proposing to do is to go back in this area against the larger wetlands and clean up a bunch of invasives that are within that area. In addition to go back and once we clean up the invasives, to go back and plant it with wetlands appropriate shrubs. Now we did, Justin Packard in my office had received some comments from staff. Basically the 2 comments on this project were, number one, all the catch basins they would like us to add what we call an ab-tech filter. So we did note that on the plan for each one of the catch basins, we'll have a filter system on it. But the other comment was they would like us to provide a more detailed, description of how we're handling the invasives, and then actually what's going to go back in there for plants. I've talked to Jim Horville about it, and the one issue we have right now, just a little history on this project, this was actually supposed to come to you last March. COVID hit, everything got shut down. Things are starting to look better, the dealership is thriving, so they want to start getting this back on the books, so they asked me to submit it in the middle of winter. Unfortunately, the wetland scientists I used to do the delineation of this property, Rich Snarsky, is not willing to go out and basically come up with a recommendation of what to remove from invasives or what to plant at this point. I've also reached out to George Logan, who's a typical soil scientist that I use in a similar situation. I don't blame him. He's covered in snow right now. So in talking to Jim, to staff about this, the recommendation I would hopefully put forward is obviously we're going to commit to doing it, but if we can do it as a conditional approval, prior to getting a building permit, we would have to provide a report from either Rich Narcy or George Logan with a recommendation on how to handle the invasives and also what to plant in that area. We're not hiding from it. We're gonna do it. It's just the timing just did not hit us appropriately on this project. Ultimately, by the time we do this mitigation, we're looking at cleaning up an area of about 11,000 square feet, so about 10 times the area of the wetlands we're actually looking to disturb. So with that, I'm gonna conclude my presentation and gladly answer any questions you may have.
I don't have a problem with what you said, but I think if we do approve this, we're gonna put in there that if we don't get that report, the time you go for building permit, we will not let you apply for building.
We talked about that, we're okay with that.
Okay. From a staff standpoint, I'd be reviewing the permit
Right.
as part of the process.
Okay.
Is there a reason why we can't keep it open for another 30 days?
I think it may take more than 30 days. Trying to put that together based upon the weather conditions at this point. Keep in mind that the applicant still, or the applicant is yet to make, start the process with the Planning and Zoning Commission, and that'll be
about a 2-month process.
2-month process. So I think, we can have it wrapped up prior to building permit even becoming an issue.
I mean, it's up to you guys if you want to continue it, if you think it's worth continuing.
I'm just saying we could probably use the same recommendation Attorney Sullivan suggested in this situation.
No, because we're not at that point, right?
No. You should just put it on the condition.
Yeah, I mean, it's up to you guys. If you want to put that, I mean, I think, and Jim is satisfied with the proposal. I think everything looks good. I was worried about the catch basins too. You're gonna put the filters in them, so. I think everything looks good to me. Other than the fact that those invasives and what you're gonna replant. But if it's, the condition is, you're gonna have it all set and done for us before the building permit is applied for, I don't have a problem with that, but I'm not.
But you won't get the building permit if it doesn't.
Exactly.
And see, and you've heard me say this in the past, we've had situations where the commission has taken an action with a condition that, we resolve items with staff, and all the approvals are in place.
Right.
And then we battle it out. But putting that condition on where they can't get a building permit until we're satisfied, it's, and I'm not saying that this applicant would, we run into that situation.
I mean, this is a big enough project, he's not.
Exactly, that's what I was gonna say, to do some mitigation for the overall value of the project.
Exactly, you're not gonna mess around with trying to hide
It's
that.
not.
But, any other questions for Bill, any questions?
Bill?
I guess he's not there.
He lives when the wind blows, the internet goes out.
Okay. If there's no other questions, yeah, right.
We're gonna close it.
Right, that's what I'm saying, no other questions, then I can make a motion to close the hearing.
And make a motion to close application 21-41W. That's Commissioner Casetta, Commissioner Rogan will second it.
All in favor?
There he is.
Now, it's up to you guys if you want to. Somebody wants to make a motion to approve the application with the.
I'll make a motion to approve application 21-01W. With the condition that the building permit.
That the mitigation and the plant replantings will be given to us before applying for the building permit.
Okay. I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Bill.
I think he's watching a ball game or something.
Next up, I need to make a motion to open application 21-0WF proposal by Premier Real Estate Services LLC to construct a residential home and associated improvements in an upland review area on lot 4, block 138 Mill Street.
Open application 21-02WF.
A second.
A second.
Rogan and Casetta. All in favor?
Aye.
Good evening again. For the record, my name is Jim Cassidy with the engineering firm House Secure Cassidy here tonight representing Premier Real Estate Services 2 LLC, who is the owner of a piece of property. The actual address is known as 0 Mill Street. The property itself is actually located at the the northwesterly corner of the intersection of Mill Street being on the right here, and Middletown Avenue being at the lower portion of the property. This is the directly across the street. If you go up the north or up, this is where Route 9 crosses Mill Street. The property itself is in the R43 zone. Presently is vacant, other than containing the billboard up here at the northerly end of the property. Overall, it's about 6.432 acres. The property is, I'd say, majority of it is covered with wetlands. On this plan, the blue line is wetlands, everything. It's wetlands, everything. I'm sorry, it's non-wetlands or upland review area, everything to the left. In addition to this red line here represents the limits of the 100-year flood. So everything to the left of that is floodplain also. So there's not a lot of developable area on this property. My client recently acquired this property. All we're simply looking to do is to cut it, to split it actually into two lots. Lot number one, so the blue line is the existing property line, the red line would be the new property line between the two lots. So lot number one would have an area of about 3.11 acres. And then lot number two would have an area of about 3.52 acres. Lot number two is designated as a non-building lot. And as we brought up last time, the only purpose for having a separate lot is it does have the billboard on it. So he can retain the billboard if he wants to sell off this lot. And obviously the billboard generates income, so he can retain it as it does today. There's two parts. Again, we're splitting a lot, so that's actually a regulated activity for the subdivision of the property. But also, ultimately, we like to get a permit to construct the house on this new lot. Now, again, the blue line here is the limit of the wetlands. The red line would be the 50-foot upland review area from the wetlands. This blue line here is the highway line. You have a 50-foot front yard setback. So we situated a house, a small house, only 24 feet deep by about 45 feet wide, right up against that 50-foot setback. We're proposing to construct that house, and if you take a look in this area, it looks like it has been filled in over the years, probably through the construction of Mill Street and other improvements that were made in the area. So there's a flat area, and then from there it basically drops off about 10 feet elevation down to the wetlands. So we put the house where we can minimize the activity in the upland review area, run a driveway from the face of the house straight out to the road. The grade of the driveway would all slope out to the road. In addition to, we're looking at putting a small rain garden off on the north-hand side of it to collect the roof leader runoff, collect it and then hold it before it discharges into the adjoining wetlands area. In addition to, right now, the gravity sewers are about on the midway of the property line, opposite side of the road along Middletown Avenue. I need to bring a gravity line across the road to a manhole. And from the house, similar to the task support project, we'll be putting a grinder pump with a low pressure force main system, bringing it up along the street line and then back down along Middletown Avenue, discharging to that gravity pump. So it will be on sanitary sewers, but it will be through a low pressure force main system. Similarly, there is a water main here in Middletown Avenue, nothing in Mill Street. We'll be sending a water service off that main and then into the front of the house. If I look at a blow up, so if we look at a blow up of the house itself, the rear portion, the rear yard around the house will be relatively small. I think more of the usable yard area will be off to the north and off to the south end of the house. Per reviewing this with your staff, there was a recommendation that we basically, along the remaining top of slope, install a split rail fence, a vinyl split rail fence. And then outside that, we put a series of wetland appropriate shrubs at a 5-foot interval. So we have noted that on the plans. We have all these shrubs and we have a series of a vinyl fence along 42-inch high vinyl split rail fence along the top of it. One important thing to note, as I mentioned, if you look at this today, it looks like it's all been filled. Fill was pushed in over the years, and you have basically a vertical slope down, not a vertical, but a steep slope down into the wetlands. The way I've got the house situated, what will happen is we'll build up the house, the first floor of the house, slightly from Mill Street, and pitch the driveway back towards Mill Street. The back end of the house would actually be a walkout. So rather than putting more fill behind the house, all we're simply doing is excavating down that slope, flattening out an area behind it, and leaving the remaining slope vegetated as it is today. So there's no fill required for it. Again, it's actually removing material. That material gets brought to the front to build it up, and then pitch that portion back to the road. So it minimizes the amount of activity you have to have towards the wetlands for the construction of the house itself. Ultimately, what does it mean? For the development of the house, the grading of the yard, the rain garden, and the installation of the sanitary sewers. We are looking at having an upland review area activity of about 12,086 square feet. I don't think we can get it down much less than that because, again, the majority of the developable area is within the 50-foot upland review area. We had looked at options of trying to build a couple houses on the property, but after seriously reviewing with the client, it was just too close. It was just, basically unrealistic to be that close to the wetlands. Ultimately, our closest point to the wetlands would be about 15 feet at this corner. But again, I think the two usable yard areas would be off to the north and off to the south on this particular site. And again, we have reviewed this with staff. Jim had called Justin in my office and went over it. There was a few comments. The comments were, again, the request to put the split rail fence in, which we've accommodated on plans, to add the additional shrubbery at a 5-foot interval along the top edge between the fence and the top of the slope, which we've added. And also in the rain garden, typically what we have is, we typically have a generic detail on the plan, but we have a plant list of recommended plants that can go into the rain garden. Jim wanted us to be a little more specific. So we've identified on the detail for the rain garden. Is within the center of it, we're looking at putting 1 3-inch caliper red maple. And then around the perimeter of it, we're going to put a series of 12 inkberries. So it's about a 5-foot on center interval. And then in the bottom, what we typically do is we put a series of perennial grasses and shrub or plants within the bottom portion of it. We have a riprap pad or a stone pad for the outlet of the roof leader so we don't get scouring the outlet. But we updated the detail on the plan to specify a little more directly what we're actually looking at planning in this rain garden. So those are the revisions that were made to the plan for Jim's request. Again, there's no direct activities associated with this application. Last meeting, the commission felt appropriate to go to a public hearing just because of its location. I know it's a highly visible place and it's been looking like a big property for years and years. With that, I conclude my presentation and glad to answer questions you may have.
I'm just wondering, besides the fence and the plantings, should there be placards, Jim?
I think the fence itself
is enough. Because I'm sure, I'm not, because that's probably going to be, I'm guessing it's going to be rental property. It's not going to be.
No, it might get sold. Could be rental, it might get sold.
I'm just saying, I just wondering if you want to put placards just to say, hey.
That's not a problem. We can have placards. Yeah.
What's the basement elevation versus the wetland elevation?
So the wetlands elevation, basement floor is about elevation 65. The wetlands out here is about 58. So you're about 7 feet higher. Right now, you're probably a good 10 to 13 feet higher. So again, what's going to happen is we're going to take down that slope in the back, take that material out of the back, bring it to the front to fill it up.
Yeah.
So the finished floor of the house will be above the
And
road.
the closest point you said was 15 feet.
Yes.
So you might, so like 7 feet. Okay.
Yeah. So again, I think the fence is a good idea. Number one, you got a steep slope going back down to the wetlands, but also it's a good demarcation is you don't go beyond this point. then you can't fill beyond on this point.
Is there any long-term maintenance necessary on that rain garden so it, maintains its function? Or will it just naturally?
No, I mean,
survive?
so you have clean water going to it, that's the advantage, you have clean roof water going to it.
Yeah.
So you don't have to worry about sediment buildup and so forth. The only maintenance is to maintain the plants in it, keep them, don't let them overgrow. Occasionally clean out the leaf debris and matter at the bottom of it, so it functions properly. What they try to do is basically, I don't want to say make it maintenance free, but make it easier.
Now, you say it's gonna be a walkout, you think it's gonna be like a raised ranch or what?
No, I think it'll be a small colonial.
Small colonial, okay.
Yeah, because the raised ranch doesn't accommodate a walkout. Unless you only have 4 feet difference in elevation. You were talking 8 feet difference in
Right.
elevation here, so it's gonna be a small colonial with probably 1-car garage. It's a small footprint, it's a 24 by 45.
Yeah,
footprint.
that's not gonna be a very big house. Any other questions? Bill, do you have any questions? If not, no other questions or comments? Jim, you're, okay. Can I make a motion to close the public hearing?
Commissioner Gravano makes a motion to close public hearing 21-02 WF.
All in favor?
Aye.
And you want to make a motion to accept or deny or?
Commissioner Gravano makes a motion to approve application 21-202 WF.
And I think we put in with the stipulations that staff made us.
The plan has been.
Okay, plan, okay.
Yeah, I've got the copies there.
Okay.
Commissioner Casada, second.
All in favor?
Thank you.
Yep. All right, now we get to our regular meeting. Our first one, a regular meeting is application 21-03 W. Proposed by the town of Berlin to construct drainage improvements in the regulated area in conjunction with the reconstruction of Percival Soccer Field on lot 65 and 69, block 54, Highland Avenue.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I think you recall last meeting, town's consultant representative made a presentation on the proposed improvements to the playing surface of the soccer field located to the rear of the Percival Field complex. The proposed activities or regulated activities fell within the grading areas of the upland review areas surrounding the perimeter of the field. It was pretty straightforward. I don't believe there were really any questions that came up as a part of the presentation last month. Certainly staff is going to answer any other questions you may have. It's pretty straightforward.
And I think it's something you guys want to do this year, correct?
Yes, the Public Grounds Department is looking to undertake the project, first thing.
Weather brisk.
Right, yes, they're actually advertising the bids on the project, I believe, tomorrow.
Okay. So you want this approved. Any questions for Jim? Can I make a motion to accept or deny?
Commissioner Rogan will make a motion to accept application 2103 W.
I'll second.
Commissioner Casada, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Go ahead, Jim, you can get the second. The last one is application 21-04 W, proposal by CRC Home Builders LLC to construct a residential structure and associated improvements within an upland review area on lot 47, block 120, number 24, Whitney Lane.
Don't know if anyone's here representing.
Yeah, this is Carl Ciarcia.
Oh, go ahead, Carl.
Yeah, hi. I think it's pretty straightforward. I don't know if there's any questions on it. We were just gonna, we took down a house that was there last year, and we're gonna put one back within the within all the setbacks and side yards that are allowed there.
It's basically gonna be on the same footprint.
Yeah. My other thing on your plans, Carl, you had, that you were gonna do pesticides and fertilizer and all that, or, are they gonna be organic? Because this is, I mean, you're right up against the Silver Lake.
I'm sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you. What was the question?
On your soil notes, on number 7, it says fertilizer, lime, and mulch shall be established to grow. You're right up against Silver Lake. Are they gonna be organics or,
Yeah, we can use organics. We've used, yeah. Yeah, it's easy enough. There's enough accessible products out there for organics, for natural.
I just want to make sure that that's put into the process, because, I don't want anybody to, they can use anything they want, because we are right up against Silver Lake.
Right. No, that's fine. That's agreeable. Yep.
And we can't take action on this anyways today. We gotta give it 30 days. Any other questions for Mr. Ciarcia on the commission?
Just rewrite that as.
Yeah.
I can work with you.
Okay, okay. I don't know if you heard that, Carl, but Commissioner Pavano said that you want to put that in the, in some form that you're going to use that, and Jim Harville said he would work with you on that.
Sure.
Okay, very good. So can I have a motion to continue this to next month?
I'll make Mr. Rogan will make a motion to continue that to 21 4W to
Can I have a second?
Commissioner Pavano, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, Carl, is there any chance you can be here next meeting?
I'm sorry, what?
Could you be here?
Can you be present at the next meeting?
Yeah, what date is that?
It'll be the first Tuesday of April, Carl.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. Our other businesses, we have election of officers.
I'd like to make a motion for the chair to remain the chair, Mr. Neiman. I'll make that first motion.
Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion?
Who was the second?
Mr. Pavano. Any other discussion, any other nominations?
Second nomination would be for vice.
Well, I just if anybody wants to make a motion for another chairman. If not, can I have a motion to approve?
Make a motion to approve, Commissioner Casada.
No, well, can I have a vote?
Make a motion.
You made the motion, you seconded it. I need a vote now.
Aye.
Sorry.
Okay, now we need a motion to elect the vice chair. That would be for Rick White.
Have a second?
A second.
Pavano, second.
Any other discussion, nominations? If not, can I have a vote for Mr. White to be vice chairman? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Bill. And that's done. Jim, any correspondence? Lisa, any correspondence? Okay.
Lisa says no.
If not, can I have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
Have a second.
Mr. Rogan will second.
Who was the? Is that in Rogan?
Mr. Rogan. All in favor?
Ugh.